decision-making. Well, we got a good decision, bringing in Slick Rick. But Marcellus, how much of the Suns' loss falls on Chris Paul?
Oh, man, a ton. I don't want to say all of it because obviously he's not the only player out there, but Chris Paul was not Chris Paul. Damn. It was one of those damn games. You want to throw it away, you know. Actually, it was more than that. It was more. You ever seen Good Times, Acho?
Temporary layoff.
There you go. Oh, you got a voice, too. One of them Florida Evan. Damn games for Chris Paul. What the hell was Chris Paul doing? Your take yesterday, even though I was pushing back, it was an excellent take because it came to life, to fruition, right before our very eyes. And what we saw before our very eyes was Chris Paul not prepared for that moment in the waning part of this game. I hate to say it, but I've been there before. Essence in the moment. And when you get ahead of yourself, when you start saying, oh, I'm about to do this, we're about to go up 3-1, I'm about to make the game-winning shot, whenever your mind leaves you and departs you and where you are in that moment, in the present, you know what happens? Things like this, unforced errors. You trip on your own self. You actually trip on your own thoughts because you're just too eager for that moment. Hate to see it happen to a veteran, but I've seen it happen time and time again, and unfortunately, more than once with Chris Paul. So I got to put a ton on Chris Paul's shoulders. Damn, Chris Paul, or as Florida Evans would say, damn.
I got to take it a step further. How much of the loss? All of the loss. It all falls on CP3. Big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games. Chris Paul, you are the one that is supposed to be the top 5 player at your position of all time. Chris Paul, you are the one that is supposed to be the first ballot Hall of Famer. Chris Paul, you are the one that many refer to as the point god, if you will. So, Chris Paul, in this pivotal moment, it's time for you to be pivotal. Devin Booker made more shots with his left hand than Chris Paul made with both hands. Let's be real now. Chris Paul, 15 turnovers over the last 3 games. That is the most turnovers over a 3-game stretch since 2018. You are too late. It's Chris Paul's fault they lost, but he's also been the reason that they've won several games. So let's put everything in context. Last thing I got to say is this, because I'm not saving it for my second lap. I told y'all, Chris Paul usually physically deteriorates. Well, now statistically, he's deteriorating. Closeout game against the Clippers, 41 points. Game 1, NBA Finals, 32 points. Game 2, NBA Finals, 23 points. Game 3, NBA Finals, 19 points. Game 4, NBA Finals, 10 points. Every game that passes, Chris Paul gets worse. Chris Paul's fault.
Marcellus, I'm going to assume that you didn't ask me if I'd seen Good Times, only because you know that I'm old enough to have watched Good Times.
It wasn't based on your
That's
color.
the only reason, right? You just needed to check because Acho is exactly of a younger generation. I want to make that clear. Look, I don't know the difference between a ton and all, but whatever it is, I'm going to add it because for me, it's all on Chris Paul. And I say that as a compliment. The reason that the Suns are in the finals is because of Chris Paul. The reason that they took a 2-0 series lead in this series against the Bucks is because of Chris Paul. And whatever happens is going to happen because of Chris Paul. He is the one guy who can score and create plays for others. I know we had those 2 games early on against the Clips where Cam Payne went absolutely bonkers, and the Clippers were still trying to sort out how they were going to play, and they didn't have a scouting report on Cam. He shocked them. But Cam Payne hasn't been able to give them that since. And the reality is that Chris Paul, as I've said many a time, doesn't just get his opportunity to make the play. Now, the reason that Booker was making that play is because Chris Paul hasn't been able to turn the corner and find that second gear against Drew Holiday and his full court pressure the way that he had earlier in the series against P.J. Tucker. And that's the difference. So now it becomes the Booker DeAndre Ayton 2-man game versus the Chris Paul Ayton 2-man game. And that has made all the difference in the world. If they can't get back to that, then I don't like the Suns' chances of winning this series. But make no mistake, Chris Paul is the reason that they're here, and he will be the reason if they ultimately don't get it done.
Slick, everything you said was accurate, except I'm going to push back on one thing, and this is what made Chris Paul struggle so much more damning, if you will.
Damn. That's the word today.
Cam Payne gave you 10 points, rather 9 points in 17 minutes. Chris Paul gave you 10 points, including a cheap layup with 10 seconds left in the game, in 37 minutes. Now, to your point, Slick, Chris Paul gets other people their buckets. But
how many assists did Cam Payne have?
Phenomenal point. Phenomenal point. He had none, which is why, to your point, Chris Paul gets other people their buckets. But, Chris Paul, if you giving the team their buckets by turning the ball over, then I'd rather just sit you down on the bench. Because Chris Paul was neutralizing getting other people their buckets, Slick, by giving the other team the ball. So I understand the 7 assists are great for you, Chris Paul, but them 5 turnovers are neutralizing. Give me Cam Payne's 19 points and 1 assist over Chris Paul's 10 points and 5 turnovers. So it's even more damning because you have a competent backup behind you. Cam Payne is not Chris Paul as it pertains to getting out everybody else theirs. But Chris Paul didn't need to get everybody else theirs that game because Booker was going to get his 42. So if you would have just, Chris Paul, given the team 20, given the team 22, what you typically do, they would have been A-OK.
Okay, but here's the thing. First of all, I don't know that Cam Payne can come in at this point and that he's going to do against Drew Holiday, if the matchups are the same, that he's going to be able to do any better than what Chris Paul has done. Cam Payne is a very streaky player, and now they have tape on him what he likes to do. So I'm not convinced that sitting Chris Paul down and playing Cam Payne is necessarily the answer. Here's the other problem with Chris Paul struggling, is that now you are asking, because with that pressure, Chris Paul has tried to overs by Devin Booker. You had an addition.